good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn, good day, good whatever it is, wherever you find yourself. Welcome to another thrilling episode of the Power Series, your one and only platform show that dissects, demystifies, brings you casual, interesting, exciting, items on the Power platform. Today, we have someone interesting. We're going to be having some kind of storytelling, then, some cool stuff about CDS. When we come back, I am going to introduce our guest and then we're going to get right into it. Stick and stay with me.
Let's go.
Awesome! Welcome again. If you're joining us, this is the Power Series. And on today's episode, we have one of the MVPs. Actually, our guest is one of the very, very first and early adopters of the platform. Tell you that. He's probably going to tell himself. So let's welcome. Where is my effect with the drum roll and a round of applause? Let's welcome Pete.
Hey everyone.
You alive? You
Hi,
alive?
hi, Power Show. How's it going? You all good?
Yep, I believe we're all doing well. It's a wonderful Sunday and probably Monday or Saturday in some parts of the world. So I guess everyone is doing awesome. We are honored to have you on the show. Pleased, excited, to have you on the show to share some wisdom and some goodness about the Power Platform. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm well, man. I'm well. Full of wisdom and goodness, I think, maybe, perhaps.
Oh well,
Shush,
you
don't tell
never know.
anyone.
You never know. As it's always interesting and exciting to have you know even not necessarily an MVP, but a power addict to share some of these things. The platform is evolving, it's growing, so people are always looking out for how to do stuff right, how to do some tips and tricks, and it's always amazing to have you guys come on the show, share. Hey, this is how I built something. This the hurdles I went through. This is how I jumped and made it happen. So hey, we are always blessed. So you might not know, but then hey, it's still what we want. We get the content and we get the deal. So hey, we're grateful for your time, and hopefully
Oh,
today's
man, it's a
session is going to
pleasure.
be an amazing one. So, as always, we like to know who Keith is, what Keith does, and how Keith got into the Power Platform.
How did I get into the Power Platform? Wow. Okay, so, like, I don't necessarily have a really great story to tell about how I got into it. Like, basically, I was doing a lot of stuff in Excel. I was doing VBA. I wasn't a VBA program. I was just doing some Visual Basic for applications
Mm.
for my company. I was that Excel guy, you know. Um, I'd done way too much of Excel. I built a complicated system that meant that, like, basically they couldn't get rid of me because if they got rid of me, the system would break. One of those. Um, and I needed to fix that.
Mm.
Um, and I also had a real business need to to do stuff on a phone, right? Because, like, I mean, I don't know if you know, but you can't use macros on a mobile device.
Yeah.
You can't use macros with an Excel file that's like an Excel online. They've effectively killed it off. And when I looked at, like, well, how do I continue this journey? How do I move on to the next bit of Excel? They started saying, well, I need to learn Python, right, and
Mm.
JavaScript and C# and all this kind of stuff. And, like, I'd done a tiny bit of web design at college, like a tiny little smidge of web design at college. And I was a designer, I was a graphic designer, but not a
Oh,
web
okay.
designer. And I could never get to grips with it. Like, it drove me nuts. So I spent probably about 6 months, 8 months doing a Python course, right? Like, I did a Python course. I did this, that, and the other. A sort of, I know I really struggled. I got 3 kids, I got a wife. I had a job. The job that I was doing was a shift work.
Mm.
So man, I was slammed, you know. And I honestly, I don't know how people do this thing where they go back to university when they're at work, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I just got so much respect from, and I realized I was missing my kids
Mm.
growing up, but like that was only after I did it. So a mate of mine, we were looking at forms. Forms had come out, right? Forms had landed, and I was like, oh my god, this is it. This is it. Like this could be the thing I've been
Yeah.
looking for. Like to do all of the other. Like I'm not going to touch the big system, but all these
Mm-hmm.
things that everyone else has been looking for, this could be a thing. Um, so I clicked on Forms Pro, and one of the things that I used a lot in Excel, like, was context sensitive drop downs. Like I
Yeah.
did those, like they were my thing. Like I was
Yeah.
really good at doing them, um, and I couldn't do them. I just couldn't do context sensitivity, and that was part of getting really clean data for me. Like if I want clean
Mm.
data, I need like stuff everything else. Like I want quality data. Like that's the
Data.
whole
Yeah.
point of doing it. Um, and I saw this power apps button. I clicked on it, right, and I opened it up and I went, "Oh, this thing's well too hard. This thing's really hard. I can't do it. This isn't for me." And then I kind of like, I kind of went and I went away for a bit. I thought, oh, it's another one of these Microsoft things that's going to be like, oh, just all smoke and mirrors. And I came back.
Mm.
I came back to it. I opened up. I think my first app was the one to do the site inspection, and I
Okay.
turned that. I opened it up. I ripped it apart, put it back together again, and I built an app that does that basically reported defects on buses, right?
Mm. Mm.
Like
Yeah.
and I did an image capture. I did a QR. I did a barcode scan as well
Mm-hmm.
in there to scan in parts. I linked it up to an open API that showed where all of the buses were,
Where?
and
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. Like it was so easy, all of the stuff I've been trying to do in my sort of 6 months coding course.
Yeah.
Like I even learned regex on that thing, like,
Yeah.
and it just felt like it was just and it all of a sudden, like everything I knew what app I wanted to build.
Yeah.
Like I'm a designer,
Yep.
I know what I need, and
Yeah.
this thing just gave it to me, man. So yeah, that's my kind of little backstory. And then the next thing I know, I was a Power Apps champ, and yeah, got involved in a community, made some
Community.
friends,
Yeah.
I'd never had, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's been pretty awesome, dude. It's been pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. It's one key thing I take away from what you said was you knew what you wanted. You knew what you wanted, but then the hindrance was, okay, now how do I develop what I want? But I know what I want, but I don't know Python, I don't know C sharp, or I mean, programming is just not my thing. And that's like kind of most of the problems or the challenge a lot of these enterprise people face. They are the owners of the data, they are the owners of the content, they know exactly what they want, but sometimes communicating that to developers to build becomes this, forth and back. Developer does something, no, not this is not what I wanted, can you do this? And that whole process becomes like a forth and back. But then with power platforms or power apps, you can, put it together the way you want it, the way you see it, and it's like within seconds. That's amazing. That's amazing.
I think of it like this, Sam. I think that, like, if you're a developer, right,
Hmm?
you must really hate doing the plumbing every time, right? Like, and I think, okay, someone said that to me, and I went, plumbing, right? So basically, I'm okay doing a bit of DIY,
Hmm?
right? I
Hmm?
can put my bathroom in.
Hmm?
I can hang the toilet roll holder on the wall. I can say where I want the
Yeah.
toilet brush. I can do that bit. I can tile the bathroom probably, right?
Yeah.
But I can't do the bit where the water goes into the house. I can't do the
Yeah.
sewage treatment. I can't
Hmm?
do the water processing plant.
Hmm?
I can't
Hmm?
do the fountain, the aqueduct, the
Yeah.
water feature, right?
Yeah.
That requires a coder, right?
Exactly.
But I wouldn't want to be a programmer if my job was putting a text box on a screen and a submit button. Like
Yep.
it would literally drive me nuts. So I think it's a happy medium, and what I personally think, and I can see happening, is that more smaller apps will be built by the citizen, by the end user, right? And it will free up the pro dev to go and do what the pro devs have always wanted to do. Like the pro devs hate doing the rubbish jobs. Like, who wants to
Yeah.
do them? It's like you went to university, you spent all this time learning, and what am I doing? Oh, right, I'm making an app to replace a bit of paper. Whoopee. You
Yeah.
know, that's
Yeah.
what I spent all of that time, all that math study, all of the study with like algorithmic thinking and stuff.
Mm.
Like, and I don't use any of it.
Yeah.
But actually, like, what you want to do is set the dev free to go and do
Yeah.
the things that they love doing, that they're great doing, and you want to set the user free to make exactly what I want. And I think this is what we're going to talk about in a little bit with the common data service, and it's part of what I see from the CDS really.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. Interesting. All right. So, what do you have for us today?
Well, what
Before
I
I
have here,
turn the whole thing to you.
I'm going to share my screen, right?
Awesome.
So this is kind of like how I kind of think this is roughly how it should be done, right? I think stories are really important. In not just in technology but in business, right? So as soon as you kind of waddle your way into Agile or Agile or one of these new project management frameworks, you learn about the user story, right? You learn about the user story, and user stories are really important for building great software, but they're also really important when you're doing something like the Power Platform, because we are at the very beginning of this thing. We're at the tech visionaries and early adopters stage of the adoption sort of curve, right? We're right at the very beginning of the slope and ramp up to a successful platform, right? You know, and you can tell that's happening. Last year there was 2.7 million Power Apps developers, and not even a year later, that was a stat from MBAS last year, which was kind of in, I think, sort of September, October time, and by March, May this year, there's 3.7 million. So that's a fair chunk of additional devs, right? But you've got to convince people. You've got to convince IT. And I think that the way you do that is not with stats and not with promises about security and promises about governance, right? And examples, because they don't believe that. What people really like is they like stories and they like people, and they like to know that there is someone like them who has done the thing that they are thinking about doing and they were successful, and this is how they were successful. So last year at the Business Application Summit, a good friend of mine, Samir Bangar, he ran a series called the Citizens Rise of the Citizen Developer, right?
Yeah.
And they were incredibly popular sessions. In fact, there were people coming up to us after those sessions saying that they are the best session they've ever been to. That was the most valuable thing they've ever heard, because at any event, because it wasn't about the clicking and the clicky draggy droppy. It was about how they overcame the business requirement, the adversity, the whatever you want to call it, to actually get past that problem, right? So they who they convinced, how they convinced them, what their vocabulary was, right? And I'll show you a couple of slides in a minute, and one of them really did change it for me. So, like, I find it very difficult to talk about the Power Platform in any meaningful kind of way without talking about Samit Saini, right?
Yep.
The story is beautiful. I struggle to tell it in meetings. I literally get a lump in the back of my throat if I play the video, right? Now, if you find an emotive story like that and you are in the right place, it transforms people's opinions of what this thing is. It becomes so much of a positive thing that they cannot say no to it, right? Now, if you're presenting to the IT department, they're kind of like, they're the poorest people I've ever met, right? In any business. No one understands what they do. It's kind of like some dark wizard magic, right? No one wants to fund them properly. No one understands the security implications of what they're dealing with on a daily basis. And yet every single manager comes in and waves a phone around and says, look at what I've got on my Google, blah, blah, blah.
Blah,
And they
yeah.
expect to have that in their business, and the IT department isn't doing that because it's keeping the lights on,
Yeah.
stopping the hackers, stopping this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So stories are super important, right? So I'll run through a couple of them. Like Samit Saini, right? Great story, totally changed the guy's life. Tell the story, find the video, and read their use cases from Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
Become more familiar with them than you are with the code. Or you are with what you do it and how you do it in Power Apps, right? Like it will stand you in so much good stead. When you go to events, talk to people, right? So Naz is on the Power Apps website, right? There she is. She does her thing. Now, I've met Naz, right? I sought her out and I met her, and it doesn't have to be these people. Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It can be anyone, right? Fion's got a great story, and from so many people have got great stories. Sit with them, listen to them, tell that story, right? These are just the ones that Microsoft kind of stick out there, and they are fantastic stories. Don't get me wrong, but there's also a whole bunch of them that are in the community that you don't hear, and they are just as powerful. So get a photo of the person, spend time with them, understand what their problem was. Don't talk to them about how they did it in terms of the technology. Talk to them about how they did it in terms of overcoming adversity and all that kind of thing. Like Courtney's a cartoonist.
Yeah.
He plays with Photoshop. That was his thing. He's a security officer, but he also makes apps. Like that's gold for any HR department, right? HR's always looking for career paths and all the rest of it. So like tell those stories, right? Now, my favorite story, and do excuse the slight change in style of slide here, but this comes from a different deck. So this is Nick Gill, right, from the American Red Cross, and a lot of the time I'll put the QR code on the screen for them to go to the use case story on the Microsoft website, whatever. Yeah, their interview on the Power Addicts and this, that, and the other, right? Now, this is Nick's strapline, and I asked them for a strapline. I say, look, if you had one thing you could say, what would it be? Like, and Nick's story at the Red Cross was, they had a hurricane coming, right? Like literally coming, about to break, big one, really big one, and they built an app whilst the hurricane was arriving and distributed it to their staff. And the lady who built the app, Kathy, she'd never built a Power App before. She had a little bit of a technological background. She worked for Cisco as a manager, that kind of thing. She was fairly convinced she could do it, but they put that out. They got telemetry back. It completely changed the way they did things at the American Red Cross. And you're like, because you know the names of the people and you can reference the story, it makes it more real, right? Yeah. And so these things are super important. There's even one that no one knows about out in a disaster story up in Canada. April Dunham, sorry. They rebuilt part of a town with some Power Apps after it had been built, like as a community. So these kinds of things are really important. Someone like Eric McKinney as well. He's a great one to reference. Like, so look, learn the stories, tell the stories. They will stand you in such good stead, like such good stead. They really will. And more so than any technical prowess that you might have. Like one of my favorites ones and is Vanessa Wald, Michael, right? Now, there's a lady you want to listen to about governance, along with Manuela Pichler, right? But like she came out with these two statements, data stewards and digital guardrails, right? Now, I'd never heard of them before, but I went to a story session rather than a technical session. And when you speak to these guys and girls, these really talented people, you learn these bits of vocabulary that stand you in really good stead, right? So like you kind of, all of a sudden it just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
It's magical, and you watch it kind of like unlock the little bit that that sort of problem that someone has, and it just kind of takes it away. It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. This is amazing. I mean, I personally, I interviewed Samit on a show, and his story, like you mentioned, it was just it, you when you take time to reflect on his story, it I was blown away. I was like, he created a career out of it, but the fact that he identified the problem, he knew what he had to do, and just like we started, you know you knew what you wanted to build. He knew that he could apply this to solve the problem, and he didn't need to have like a 4 year degree or all that in computer science or programming, and he solved the problem. Like you said, let's go to the use cases and look at the stories, read what pushed these people to create solutions that today, are world class. Georgia is another example. Even though she did it in Schlumberger, now this has been replicated for this whole COVID crisis, and yeah,
Yep.
it's amazing. It's amazing, man. It's
And you
amazing.
really want to make sure that like you've got these in a deck somewhere and you can pull them out at any minute, right? Like Audrey Gordon used to talk about having
Yeah,
a Swiss Army knife, right?
right.
Having
Yeah.
an emergency carry kit of um, of content ready if
Mm,
someone needs you to sort of like do a presentation, talk
yeah.
about something. You can spin it up and talk about it straight away, right? Now you need those stories in your kit because there is nothing more powerful than a first time user learning the Samet
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
mean properly learning the story, not just the lip service bit,
Mm-hmm.
like finding out about the guy. There is nothing more powerful than talking about Eric McKinney
Mm,
to an IT manager of a
mm-hmm.
medium size company, right?
Yeah.
Because he is that guy.
Yeah.
Like you find that relatable person, you find that relatable story that matches roughly what that person's telling them, and you'll find. Now, I spent Ignite 2018
Mm,
on or near the Power App booth, just chilling and hanging with Power Apps people who wanted to chit chat. Um, and I just told stories, the stories I knew over and over and over again that matched people's things. And there was only one guy who I couldn't match a story to, right? One dude I couldn't
mm,
match a story to. And he just started talking about his daughter, and then bang, like I had Ashley Colmsley's story. And the guy said, he said, I can't believe you just told me that. He said, my hairs are standing up on my arm. He said that like that wonderful story about Ashley overcoming adversity and winning the fidget
mm.
spinner
Spinner.
challenge and
Yep.
all this
Yep.
kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
And and it's just like if you really know these stories backwards, you almost don't need to know as much of like all that kind of mad stuff that Hero and Junichi have got in their brains, and Sancho's got in his brain.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, like, I'm not that person.
Mm,
I'm not that guy. Like, I don't have the mental capacity to do the amazing things that those people do. But I do know how to tell a story. So I think learning to tell them well, tell them honestly, and tell them
yeah.
about you as well. Tell them
Your
your
own
story.
way.
Tell them how
Yeah.
you came at
Yeah.
it. And be honest. Don't and don't hold back. Be vulnerable. Definitely be vulnerable and be open about it,
Yeah.
and sort of talk about your problems. It's good.
Awesome. I mean, so storytelling. I mean, definitely we're telling the story. I know that another, huge thing that you mentioned you're going to talk to us about, how do we translate the stories into data using CDS? What's the correlation?
Yeah. So I mean, this is part of it, right? And I think like one of the reasons why I've had to tell so many stories
Mm,
um, is that I put my flag on the common data service really early on. Um, I have built apps in SQL, in SharePoint. I've done it in OneDrive, on Excel. I've done one on-prem thing with Oracle a little bit, and a few other bits and bobs,
yeah.
just mucking around. Right now, the part of the reason why I've had to learn to tell stories for the CDS is it's new.
Okay.
Um, it's not SharePoint, and SharePoint sort of got very low costs. Um, and people are a little bit wary of what it is and kind of how it works and all the rest of it, right? Suffice to say that it takes away a lot of the pain, right? So we go back to that point um, about developers doing what developers love, right? And again, like if you didn't have to write SQL again, it would make you happy, right? I don't know many people who relish writing SQL. Like it's just not the most fun in the world. Like you're not going to wake up in the morning and go, "Yeah, I'm going to write a SQL today." That being said, they love the ease of SharePoint, right? Everyone loves SharePoint, super easy, create a list, create a document repro, all that kind of thing. But it is easy in Power Apps to run out of road with SharePoint, right? And I found myself doing a lot of additional work in SharePoint that I didn't need to do, right? And the storytelling bit has actually been really beneficial for me when I've been working with a common data service, because I've been able to articulate that through stories, right? So like Martin Lee, for example, from Autoglass, he built 60 connected apps because of the CDS, right? Whereas someone else, those apps aren't quite as interconnected with SharePoint. And the other thing as well is you don't get the model-driven side of things, right? There's a really good reason to do it, is model-driven apps, mainly from the admin app perspective. Like if you want to have a really decent admin app for moving data around and kind of, the deployability, all that kind of thing, CDS is just where it's at, right? So in case you don't know, right, the common data service, right? I personally think the common really stands for like, and it's a really weird analogy, but just go with me for a minute on it.
Sure.
I think it's like common land, like the idea, like, so if there's a common in Britain, it means that anyone can take their cattle to graze on the common, right? And I think that CDS is, I think the common bit of it means that like it's a platform for building apps. It was at one point called the Common Data Service for apps, but like that sort of precluded it as it's only for apps, but it's not. It's Microsoft's Oracle killer. It's Microsoft's SAP Slayer. It's like it's more than just a data source, right? It's kind of where all things are pointing. So if you look, Forms Pro, CDS, the new project is kind of like rumbling around in CDS. There's a bunch of stuff that's kind of pointing at CDS, and flow approvals, CDS. It's like they don't need to be in CDS, yet they are in CDS, and for very good reason. It's very cool. And to that point about like, not reinventing the wheel, it's built on this common data model, right? So you've got like a lot of stuff pre-built for you. Now, if you're in SharePoint land, the amount of times I built like a SharePoint list that said address, like line 1, address line 2, postcode, blah 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 blah. I've done that like so many times, like so many lists, so many apps, different sites with different things for different people, different security, like, and yeah, it was great, man. But like, it eats away at the pureness of the data, right? And you end up with little silos, little pots of data everywhere. And I know you can kind of bring it all together, but remember, we're citizen developers here. We're not SPFX. We're not pro coders. We're just doing stuff with SharePoint in an organization on M365, right? That's what we're doing. So like the common data service is big, it is deep, but you don't need to use a tremendous amount of it to get a lot out of it, right? I think the best description of the common data service comes from the guy who's kind of in charge of making it, a guy called Ryan Jones, right? And he says that the common data service easily structures a variety of data and business logic to support interconnected applications and processes in a secure and compliant manner. And Ryan always goes down to break this down. So let's break it down, right? It easily structures a variety of data. Yes, it does, right? And we'll look at that in a little bit. And when I mean a variety of data, there are a whole host of data types, right? So many data types, it's unbelievable. And if you're in model-driven land, you've got even more power with those data types, because you've got an email data type that knows that when I click on it, it's going to open up an email. I've got a phone data type that when I click on it, and if I've got telephone integration set up, it will dial the phone number. All of that kind of cool stuff is in there, right? And it's all interconnected. The next bit is business logic, right? Like, you can build Visio style, really simple business rules in CDS, right? And it's not hard. You do it in app in a day, but you try doing the same thing in SharePoint or in SQL, where you've got, like, you want to make a field required if another field is set to true or false, or it meets a condition or a complicated set of conditions. You want to hide data, show data, make it required, unrequired, all that kind of stuff. Like, that is difficult to do. In SharePoint, you cannot do that through the interface in an easy way. And I don't know if you can even do it through SPFX. So yeah, absolutely. Interconnected applications. Yeah, man, listen, it's a relational data source. And you can definitely do a whole bunch of interconnected applications. Just look at Martin Lee's story, 60 apps, completely revolutionizes his business, all sorts of apps, all on one data source, all in one environment, just, everything all in one place. People talk about the single source of the truth, and it takes a dispatcher, a windscreen repair company to do that, right? Like, come on, it is that easy. And it's secure and compliant. Now, like, it's in Azure, right? But it's also got this really beautiful and deep, complicated yet easy to use security model, where you've got things like a business unit. You've got the concept of a team, but you can be multiple teams. You've got the concept of every record has a concept of ownership. It's got the ability to have secure fields and records. It's got all the stuff you'd expect. I remember working with a dev who was kind of okay at SQL, and I said, yeah, can you do this thing and this thing on this? And he said, oh, well, I'll have to figure it out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, in this thing, I just click on a button and it does it. So how hard is it in SQL? And it's like, exponentially difficult, my friend. Everything you do is like pro code. It's like, it's so hard. So let's take away the pain and just have the data source, right? So, like, to wet the I know you guys you have a lot of pro coders who follow your thing, right? And they're going to be like, I'm not going to get to play with my sexy toys. Yeah. Well, this is the sexy toys, right? And in fact, there's more here than should be. Where it says storage down the bottom, we should put some more in there. But you've got SQL Elastopods, you've got Blob, you've got Cosmos DB, you've got Azure Search, you've got a whole host of stuff there, all built in a beautiful, glorious way. That job server, by the way, that's one where you can write your pro code and your plugins and your C# and all that kind of stuff, and go for broke. And this ports out to Azure Data Lake Gen 2 now, right? So you can dump this out into a reporting database, just ingest it. It's beautiful. It's so elegant. And it's all managed for you. So, like, again, that's where the pro coder can go and build the awesome AI. They can go and build all the integrations and all that kind of stuff, that, like, where they're not putting a text box on a screen with a submit button, because they're just, who wants to do that, right? And then there's all this other crazy stuff off to the side. And I like, there is just so much in it. It is such a deep tool. There's an SDK, go and download it, have a great fun. There's about 15, I think 20, maybe more, like big bits of dynamics that sit on top of it. Everything from field service, and resource scheduling, all that kind of stuff, all the way through all the other bits of dynamics. It's just so much, so much. There's even bits where finance and operations and talent, where they're all working together, or whatever it's called now, Dynamics HR. It's so rich. It really is so rich. And with new virtual entities coming in the short future, where they're bringing data from FinOps into Dynamics. It's just absolutely incredible. So there's so much richness there. But the most important bit is this bit, right? This is where you go to build it, right? and it looks like SharePoint, right? So you've got all of that stuff we just looked at, right? Like Cosmos DBs and Elastipods and stuff that people don't even know. And it's all abstracted through an interface that looks like SharePoint, right? It's the power of SQL with the complexity of the Azure stack. With the simplicity of SharePoint, right? And like, why would you not want that?
That is, it actually the first time, like I was taking a look at CDS, I was like, wait a minute, this is like some unified data structure with all my, bolts and nuts that I'll probably be turning on and off in Azure and all of that data sources put together. So I was like, this is interesting, So I look into it, I use it, I'm like, oh my god, this is like SQL management, administration, all kind of like put together into one piece of a service, which I think it's interesting. It's amazing, though. For some of the things, the reservations that I hear from people as well, it's premium. Would it cost me more as opposed to using just SharePoint list? Apart from the structure, that clean data you get and all that, is it worth the cost? How would you convince someone? Is it worth
I
the
think
cost?
that again, telling a story. I built an app that was on CDS. Oh, sorry, it was on SharePoint. I wanted to keep it super low cost. It was for 4 people in a business. It really didn't like stack up paying for it. It was a bit of a low cost thing that we were doing. And I couldn't get SharePoint to guarantee it would always return all of the data I wanted, right? And if I missed one of those records, there was a potential lawsuit, potential fine, right? That amounted to thousands of pounds. Not much, but still thousands. And my boss looked at me and he said, well, hang on a minute, right? It's taken you a week to do this thing in SharePoint, what you're telling me, because it doesn't, you're trying to do a workaround, yeah? Yet you've got this other thing which would cost a bit of money, but it would have saved you a week. He said your wages alone would have paid for those licenses for 2 years, let alone the potential fine that we're saving.
Yeah.
So there's a very good reason in that individual use case to use CDS, right? Now, I like, granted, it gets expensive at scale, right? But I think that there's the chances are that when you've gotten to that stage, it's so useful to your business that it would be mad not to do it. When I was doing the bus thing, one of my guys there said it saved him about an hour or 2 a day, all of the Power Apps and stuff, right? So I only need 1 hour, in fact, half an hour of that man's wages to pay for the licensing for the month. And I've got 2 of those hours every day for his working for that month. Yeah. And I only need half of 1 day's time saving to pay for it. And then, like, it really, we've got that amount of efficiency. It's driving profit in the business. Why would you take that away? And I also think, Sam, that there's a propensity for IT to like the e-licensing SKUs. So you'll look at E3, E5, all that kind of stuff, and you'll see people taking bundled licensing, and you think to yourself, well, hang on a minute, like for a first line worker, they might end up with an E1. Sometimes you see them with an E3. So, well, why have they got an E3? Oh, well, the union wanted them to have Office 365, and you think, well, hang on, if they'd had an M365 like first line worker license and CDS, it would have been a no-brainer. Like, or the other one is the just CDS license. So there, you can just have the common data service license without anything else. So theoretically, you could run your business on that. I mean, look, it's horses for courses. No one likes paying for stuff, but I think that with the security, with the power of the data, with the the kind of, we know that that's the right thing to do. As technologists, we all know that's the right thing to do. We've just got to convince the paymasters to pay for it. And that's where the stories are so important.
Yep. Amazing. I mean, you had it from the awesome power champion, who has, played with it, messed with it, built business production, applications with it. So it's good to try it out. Unfortunately, there are a lot of, accounts that can help you try CDS for free. So hey, try and, take a look at it. So, Pete, do you have any demo for us? Say yes.
Oh, do you want a demo? Oh,
If you
wow.
can. I mean,
Sam, I didn't realize you wanted a demo, dude. You're putting me on the spot. Right, hang on. Give me a second.
I mean,
Whoa.
If you just have anything to share, it's just else you can probably just show us a CPS interface, something, just give people.
Okay. Right, hang on a minute. I've always got something up my sleeve, Slam. You know that. Don't leave home without a demo. Right.
I know.
Let me get my other screen up. Where are we?
Okay. Oh, so Foyin has a question for you. Actually, she's saying that how can she connect a field in one entity, another field in another entity?
When she says that, does she mean that she wants to bring the information from the entity across?
Yes, looks like.
Okay.
Let me actually get here to actually give us some more context of what Zach's saying, and then we can do like a Q&A coming from the chat, and then maybe you can just walk us through.
So I'll show you that rather than showing you my street cleaning demo.
Okay.
Let's look at so let's have entity 1, right?
Yeah, actually she says yes. So bringing from like a different, she responded yes to that.
Okay, right. So I got entity 1. So we might call this like accounts or something like that. I mean, we can demo this in a number of ways, right? So I've got we'll call this entity A, right? And it will be a really weird plural name, but there you go, right? And I want to take that, and I'll put a field in it which will be like number, right? Okay. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. There genuinely is a couple of ways of doing this. So let's just wait for that to provision. The best way to do it is to use a relationship, right? Relationships in CDS are everywhere, and sometimes in Power Apps you have to create what we call redundant relationships to allow Power Apps to function in a rapid manner, right? Yeah. It's just one of those things. So I've got entity A. I've created an entity. I'm going to go and create another new entity here. So I'll go back to my solution. Always building the solution, by the way. Never not, because it allows you to lift and shift stuff, right? Entity B. So I've got entity B, got that kind of thing. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this. The first thing you need to do is set a relationship, right? And I'm going to add a relationship. So I'm going to say there's many B's to an A, right? And I will find entity A. There we are. Flashes while it's provisioning. It's annoying. Yeah. Entity B, entity A. There we go, right? So I'm going to have there's going to be a lookup field on this entity. I should always suffix it with ID, yeah? Because that's going to be my GUID. I'm going to get a GUID in there. Okay. Yeah. So really, that will all be lowercase anyway when it comes in. And there's also a mad relationship name as well down there, and there's some descriptions. And this is where it gets really cool, Sam, because you can specify your cardinality, your referential integrity here, where I can say it's referential. So for example, custom, I can say, look, if I delete this, the parent record, what happens to this one? Does it delete? Do I remove the link? Do I restrict access to it? And I can do that for all of these different things. That kind of granularity is advanced in SQL. You really got to know your chops to get that kind of thing to work in SQL. Doing that in SharePoint, good luck. I'm just saying, right? Like, there's probably a way of doing it, but it's going to be difficult. Here, it's all on a drop down, right? It's a data source for enterprise, and it's built for that reason, right? So I've got my entity there, and I've got entity A. There's a couple of ways that you can kind of like we can make some data. So let's just save that entity. Hopefully it will go quick. So let's go and make a record in entity A, right? And I'm going to go into the data tab. In fact, let's go to forms first. Let's make a quick form. There's a default form that comes with every, and it always does this at the moment. This is a bit of a bug. Do apologize. Please bear with us, users. So there's a default form that comes with every single entity, which is just basically like you get the primary name field and the owner field, right? And that's great, but like you normally want a few more bits and pieces. So we'll just pop that one on there. We'll hit save, and then we have to hit publish because there's like it's not live until you publish it.
Publish it, yeah.
Come back. Does a lot of spinning. It's not the fastest thing in the world. We'll go to data. Now, before in the common data service, you couldn't do this. You had to go into Dynamics and build a model-driven app and muck around to actually make records. But no, not anymore. Here we are. So I can add record. And here we are. So I can put I can put a name in here. So I can say like value to send, and we'll make it 100. Everyone likes 100. So everyone's minimum. And you see her at the end, right? This is really cool.
Okay, this
is actually the GUID for that record, right? So like that's a really good place to come and grab it because a lot of the time you're going to need that for your flow. You might need that for something, and all the rest of it, right? But there's a really easy place to get it when you're in this view. When you come back, we'll just refresh the data. There it is. We can't see number because we've not got our custom fields turned on. So now we can see everything. We've got our GUID, we've got our number, we've got everything, right? Well happy. Right, so let's go to the other entity. And I got this is entity B's ID, this is entity A's ID. So again, we're going to make a form. We've got our basic form that comes in, and we're just going to drop entity A on there as a thing to look up. And you don't have to do it this way. You can do this in Power Apps. You can do this in Canvas apps. You can build a model-driven app. You can do all sorts of stuff. All sorts of ways of doing this. You can load this data in from Excel, all that kind of stuff. And this is just the fastest way to make data I've found, right? So this is a value of entity B. And I want to pick entity A, right? So there's my value to send, right? Let's just say, and if I click on that, right, if I save this, this is part of the glory of model-driven apps. I click on that, boom, I'm back at the other record, right? So it knows it's a thing. Yeah, I click on me, boom, I'm going into the user, right? So it's like I've got all that kind of awesomeness in there. So it's just, man, it's glorious. And this little related records thing at the end here, I can go and jump and like look at stuff and. Like I can always see all of the things that are related to this specific entity, right? Which is really cool. So to Finn's question, how do I get the data in, right? So now we've got a value, right? So if I'm in Canvas apps, right? If I'm in Canvas apps, I can do. Let's create an app quickly. We'll just do a blank one. Just call it some, blurb. Every programmer's password that was, by the way. Right, so we'll do this one way. So let's grab an entity, right? So let's grab a gallery. Just bosh that on the screen. We're just going just a standard gallery. I'm going to pick entity A. That's what I want. And I've got my first thing there. So I'll put my text box in. There you go. Value to send, right? That's entity A. But if I want to look at entity B, right? So let's look at that. Entity B. Okay, so let's drop that in there. go. And I want to get that value from entity A, right? So in here, I can let's drop another text label. I can say this item. Oh, doing that as text. Sorry, should be doing that up here. Entity A dot, and now I've got everything there from entity A available. Right. Okay. I can even see the entity B's as a collection of entities, right? I don't want that. I wanted that number, didn't I? I wanted number 1, and there you go. Right, that's the field I inadvertently named as number 1, but I just So I can get that back. I can create it back when it was, it was created on, boom, like it comes back to me. So I'm now looking and talking to that parent entity, right? That's one way of doing it, and it's kind of cool, but there is a limit. You can only do one level. Okay. So if I'm thinking now I'm in entity C, right? Let's just pretend we're in entity C for a minute, and I want to get something for entity A via entity B. I can't, right? I can't. So I have to bring that down from. I can go and do a lookup. I can go and do lots of things, but there may be a subset of what's in entity A that I really want to get my hands on, right? That I want to have in every entity B. Okay, I hope everyone's following me. I know this is getting a bit bonkers, right? But the way you do that is by using a calculated field, right? So I would just say like number from entity A, maybe. Like, I don't know, we'll just call it that for fun. It has to be of the same type, right? And I go in and I'd say like a calculate field, right? And then I go and say, like, just show that value on the screen. Yeah. I just want to put that value in that box. And it will give me the ability to do that. So let's go and do that. You could do it with flow as well. You could write to it every time a B is created, go and get the parent from A, and you could write that in as a hard thing. But right, so a little caveat, you can only have a maximum of 10 calculated fields. So that there is some limitation on it, and it is a little bit janky and a bit old. So occasionally it's a bit creaky and it takes a little while to come down. But let's do it again. Sometimes it comes up quicker on the second try. There you go. Right. So I can go in here and I can say entity A lookup. Right. So I want to get the stuff from entity A, and I want just that. And there I go.
Oh.
Yeah, it's glorious, isn't it? And that could be something where I want to employ some maths to it. I could do like times 10. I could multiply that by another number in entity B.
Entity B, okay.
Yeah. Or if I've got two related entities, like I might have the exchange rate somewhere, I might have something coming, and I've also got the ability to apply conditional logic. Now, when I start applying conditional logic, these just keep coming. Like, they just keep going on and on and on. I don't know. I've not gotten to the end of how many you can have. I've had about 6 or 7 so far, where I've different if statements to change stuff, and it's just glorious, right? It just works, and that's rendered straight away on the data, right? So I'll always see that kind of like number from entity, whatever it is, if it comes down, and for some reason it hasn't. So I look stupid now.
No, you don't. I mean, this is very.
Oh, it didn't save. I didn't save it. That's why, Sam. Look, see, I shut the window and I didn't save it. Look.
Save it, yeah. Okay.
See me, right? There's a lesson for you. Always hit the save button. There's something you'll learn in Dynamics. It's definitely a thing, right? I hit OK, but I didn't hit save at the top there.
Okay, yeah, the top, yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. But like, look, and then there's the other way, Sam.
Yeah, save and close, yeah.
Yeah, there's the other way, which are roll-up fields. Now, roll-up fields are really annoying. There you go, right, we got it, right? So roll-up fields are really annoying. So this is the ability, like, to say I want to roll up a subset of a many related to this one entity, right? So imagine we've got entity C and it's got a load of transactions on it. It's got a load of purchases on it from a customer. And I want to roll up how many there are, what the sum value is. You can do that really easily, exactly the same way, or almost exactly the same way. Very, very powerful. But, and it's the most annoying but in the whole wide world, they only refresh out of the box twice a day.
What?
And it's yep, right.
But
I know.
We use a flow to do that? Can we use like Automate to do that?
I think there's a way of refresh? of doing a refresh on it. Like you can automate that with a bit of code, but I think there's a cost of doing it or something. There's like some weird thing.
Okay.
And for a citizen developer, it doesn't come out the box like that. And I just, in my personal humble opinion, it's 2020. And we should be talking about live data. We're supposed to be living on the moon. I've seen that show, Sam. You're sitting there with more IoT than they put when they put the man on the moon with, and we can't have a refresh field that happens all the time. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
But you find this thing just has so. I mean, like, if you're looking at the fields thing, right? These are the fields you've got, right? There's so many field types. It's just absolutely unbelievable. One of my favorite ones is like this really elegant auto number, and how I can kind of just like a lot of entities I make might, for apps, are one button apps, right? An app that like I want to scan something. Yeah, when I scan something, I might not want to give it a name, right? Sorry, I might want to just say like, boom, this thing happened, and walk away. So that primary name field doesn't really, I don't need it, right? I'm creating a stamp of something happening. So I can go date prefix number. What's annoying about this thing, by the way, right, is the date format. You kind of have to pick it. And when you go into custom, what you can then do is like change it to
the formats that works.
Normal non-American days, right?
Yeah.
I've got caps lock turn on it, and then go like DD, and now I've got a sequence number after it, right? So I can have a 9 sequential number after that, and I can go like I want a seed value of 1, and I can also do like hyphen hours. I even do like big hours. There we go. Little minutes, seconds, right? Like the whole thing, yeah. Maybe not seconds. No, it doesn't support that format. Right, there we go. So minutes. So I can have like a very elegant preview there, and I can also prefix it with like a this might be for entity B, right? So I might call this EB hyphen, and I just create a readable O number, right? Like almost good enough to be a unique code. Now you combine this with a GUID, and you're laughing.
Yeah. That's like a solid one. At least that I know what. I mean, that will not have a lot of collisions. I mean, we'll barely probably have it considering, mixing all these things up. Yeah.
But you've got a GUID to do that for you anyway. Like you've always got the GUID there. Every record has one of those kind of 36 character, uniquely identifiable things. And it's always going to be there for you. It's on every single record has one. Everything in the CDS runs on GUID, so you're laughing all the time, and it's doing all the optimization for you in the background. Like all of the complexities are taken away from you largely. There's some stuff you can do to tune it. There's some stuff the pro coders can get involved with, but largely. The other thing as well is like elegance in terms of required fields. So when you're in the model-driven app, you can have optional, you can have recommended, right? I should have this data, but I'm not saying you must. And then you've got required. And all of these awesome advanced options down here as well. So there's so much richness in here. And that's just for one field, right?
Yeah, just for one field, yeah.
The ability to turn auditing on for that particular field, right? Like, come on, that's exactly what you want in this GDPR proof planet that we live on,
I know, right? That is very interesting. I mean, hey, you heard it from Keith. And yeah, we're like exactly an hour in. Keith, before I let you go, any last words, any advice, any tips for people, citizen developers getting into Power Platform, Power Apps, any pointers for them?
Yeah, I'll give you my one and only pointer. I learned this earlier this year. Don't judge uh, your beginning by my middle,
Mm, mm.
right?
That
Like,
is,
and don't ever do that. Like, start where you're starting. Just because it seems that I know a load of stuff, I meet people every day who know 150 times more than I do. I've spent probably the last 3.5, 4 years of my tech journey worried about what I know, um, whether I know enough, and it eats
yeah,
away at you. Um, like, just break it down into bite-sized chunks. It is so massive. Someone told me the other day that you can't know all of dynamics anymore. Like, you used to
yeah,
be able to at one point know
yep,
all there was to know.
yeah,
It's just too big.
yeah, and
Um, Mark
yeah,
Smith says, be the riser in the tea. Like, have one deep specialism. Find what you love. Figure out what that is. That's your specialism, and then have a broad understanding of technology on the top. I think that's the best bit of advice, really. And just don't worry about what other people are doing about their cool stuff. Focus on yourself. Focus on your story. And build your app for you.
yeah,
Like Donna Sakar said yesterday, build for one, expand for many. You know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, folks, very interesting. As you heard from, our friend, MVP, our champion. I mean, build for one, skill for many. And well, so yeah, for is asking, I need a link for getting started with model driven apps. For I'll hook you up. I'll share there's actually a Microsoft Learning part for model driven apps. I'll share that with you after the show, so just get in touch, and I'll share that for you guys who also follow us. Well, all too
I,
soon.
I think my best tip for learning model driven apps is whatever you do, learn a bit. Don't learn a bit of dynamics. Watch the how to use dynamics from an end user perspective. Because
Mm,
when you're in a model driven app, you want to know what all of those little buttons on that top bar mean. Because you
yeah.
might not know what they mean and how they work, and it will drive you around the bend. There's so much terminology that's a bit
Mm,
quirky
yeah.
in model driven apps. But once you get them, they're really fast to build. You just need a little primer. Sarah Critchley's got a really good book on it, by the way. It's very good. Have a look at it. I think it's Dynamics for Beginners or something. It's on my bookshelf over there. It
Oh, okay.
says Dynamics CE Essentials. I mean, it's
Okay.
the title's wrong, but nowadays, because they change your name every 5 minutes. But it's a very good book.
Sure, sure. I'll make sure to, get that out for viewers to, go check out. Well, all too soon, we've come to the end of another exciting conversation, another exciting session of the Power Series. And as we do it all the time, to give Keith, the feel, give Keith the feel of what's going to happen. I'm just going to I'm just going to flip my camera for him so that the next thing I'm going to do, he will see that and enjoy it. So you can keep looking at my video. That should give you a picture of what's going to happen. So as we all know it, we reveal the next person coming onto the show,
Ooh.
and with the club offering, we have Hadith.
Yes.
Yes. Hadith is coming onto the show, and I think Hadith also was just nominated for. I mean, he got his MVP nomination. So congratulations
No, he
to
got it. He
you.
got it.
Yeah,
He
he
is an
got it.
MVP. Yeah,
He's an MVP
as
now.
of
Yes.
Friday.
Yeah. So Hadith, congratulations. Wherever you are now, and we're ready for you to come and give us some exciting stuff about Power Apps. Power controls. So Keith, seen it. He's the next person coming on. And if you have anyone, as Donna always says, if you want to volunteer someone come on the show, just hit us up, and we're going to make sure that we get that to happen. So, from me, myself, from Keith, And all of you, around the world watching us, thank you so much for making another date with us. Until I come your way again next week, stay safe. Like Keith said, learn what you can learn, be you, build your app, solve your own problems, and then make the world a better place. So, till next week, adios. Awesome. And we are not streaming, we are offline. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I know, right? I know, right? It gets interesting all the time. Actually, let me flip the camera back. Yeah, it's like every day you're learning something new. Every day something, you're picking up um something interesting. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. And hey, that was awesome. All those pointers and the story, because a lot of people feel that even though it's a developer stuff, like you see what Sancho is doing, what Brian is doing, what Alan is doing, they're like, oh no, I would not be able to do it in a million years. Especially those who use Power Apps to build games. I mean, even for us, like developers, are like, what? How are they doing it? You know? Yeah, 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 yeah. And there's one thing I realized. I realized that if you start from zero, trying to build your own thing, you learn a lot. You learn a whole lot because you are in there like, okay, now I have this idea of what I want to, and I'll give you an example. So I'm praying this goes through. So we actually I've got to the stage where the proposal is going to be taken to the directors of, or actually the Minister of Interior, because I'm trying to get the Ghana Immigration Service to use Power Apps for their embark disembark card. So we've gone through all the internal loops. The whole immigration IT department is on fire. They want it. They want to learn it and all that. And you talked about stories. So one of the things I did in the presentation was to play Submit story for them, because I mean it's like airport immigration. It relates kind of like and I played it to them and I told them like, just watch this and let's continue with the presentation and have a discussion. And I could see in their faces that after Submit's video, like, wait a minute, he was just a security man. He was able to build this with no skill. I mean, it really like it's settled. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anything, yeah, 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 yeah. Mm, 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 yeah. Mm, mm. Once, yeah, and that's it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, that's awesome. That's very important. But thank you very much. I'll definitely feeling as to how things go, and definitely will be picking up and picking up some stuff from you to implement this. So hey, thanks so much for making this happen, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Safe. You too.